Hey everybody, welcome back to the Income Stacker. Today we're going to talk about Dodd Frank rules. These are rules which we have to be aware of when we're selling a house that we own on owner financing. So let's say you own a house and you want to sell it to someone with some type of owner financing or let's say a land contract or just straight out seller financing, then you need to be aware of these rules. So let's go through some of the rules, and I kind of summarized it here to make it as simple as possible, and hopefully it helps you out. So exactly what is Dodd Frank? Well, back in 2010, Barack Obama signed into law a 2,314-page Dodd Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protections Act. Now, only a very small portion of this act is related to what we're talking about today in terms of seller financing. However, the Dodd Frank Act basically restructures the oversight of financial regulations and amends the TILA, which is the Truth in Lending Act. Don't really have to worry about that, but these laws did affect seller financing deals that were originated on or after January 10, 2014. And if the property is occupied by a buyer that is a primary resident. So the buyer buys a property and it's their primary residence, or in other words, an owner-occupied property. So if you buy a note that is originated after that date that was seller financing, you have to make sure that they structured the note so it abides by the Dodd Frank rules. If you bought a note that was structured before that, then you don't have to worry about it. Also, if you structure any notes today, then you have to make sure that you follow the rules. One exception, of course, is the commercial transactions, which include rentals, fix and flip, etc. Those are exempt, and the sale of land as well are not affected by the Dodd Frank Act. DFA stands for Dodd Frank Act. So, basically this is just for owner-occupied type properties. And if you sell it to an investor, you don't have to worry about it. If you rent it, you don't have to worry about it. That type of thing. So how does it affect seller financing? Well, part of the Dodd Frank Act is a requirement that a licensed mortgage loan originator must oversee the originations in which the buyer intends to occupy the property as their own residence. So if you're selling a property, again, on owner financing and they're going to live there, then you have to abide by the rules. However, there are two exemptions to this rule, and they are as follows. One is what we call the single property exemption, and you can do that every 12 months. And then there's what we call the not more than 3 properties exemption, which happens every 12 months as well. So in other words, you can't do that more than every 12 months, but we'll check out the rules and you'll get more clarity in a second. So let's take a look first at the single property exemption. Basically this is a person that's selling their house. Let's say they own a house and they're just going to sell their house on owner financing. It's a one-time deal. Once every year they can do this and they don't have to be affected by all the rules. There are some rules that apply to, but most of the rules are not enforced in this case. So any natural person, estate, or trust who provides seller financing to an owner-occupant only one time in 12-month period. This cannot be a LLC, corporation, partnership, or something like that. So, for example, if I own the property in an LLC, I couldn't have this single property exemption. Second, the loan can include a balloon, whereas you're going to see in most of the Dodd Frank, you cannot include a balloon, but in this case, you can include a balloon, and the seller does not have to provide or prove the borrower's ability to pay. So, as you'll see in a second, there's a couple rules, one of which, in the Dodd Frank rules, you cannot a balloon, and you have to show the homeowner's ability to pay. However, in this case, you do not have to follow those two rules because it's an exemption. However, even with the single property exemption, there are restrictions, and here are the restrictions. There's 4 of them. Interest rate fixed for first 5 years and no negative amortization. Number 2, adjustable rate allowed, but cannot adjust more than 2% per year or more than 6% over the life of the loan. 3, the seller must not be a builder. So let's say a builder builds a bunch of houses and wants to sell them on owner financing. Unfortunately, even if he did this just once a year, he cannot fall under the single property exemption, which I think is total BS, but that's my opinion. Number 4, the seller must have owned the property, right? So that's pretty obvious, I think. Okay, so hopefully that's clear. Now let's take a look at the not more than 3 properties exemption. What does that mean? So any person or entity cannot provide seller financing to an owner-occupant more than 3 times in a 12-month period without using a mortgage loan originator. MLO stands for mortgage loan originator. So in other words, you could do this 3 times a year without having a mortgage loan originator, and it's not a problem as long as you follow certain rules. And some of the rules are the loan cannot include a balloon versus, as I showed before, it could include a balloon. The seller does have to prove the borrower's ability to repay, right? So they have to make sure they have income to, which is obviously smart to do anyways. You have to prove the person's ability to repay the loan. Also, the restrictions that I mentioned before are also in play here. So they're the exact same things. Interest rate fixed for the first 5 years, adjustable rate allowed but cannot adjust more than 2% a year or 6% over the life of the loan. Seller must not be a builder, and seller must have owned the property. So again, just going back a slide here, the big difference is the loan cannot include a balloon, and the seller does, have to prove the person's ability to repay. So more than 3 loans. So if you do more than 3 loans in a year, you must have a mortgage loan originator and comply with all the regulations, such as the loan cannot balloon. The seller must have to prove the borrower's ability to repay. The interest rate has to be fixed for the first 5 years, and so on. The same rules that we showed before. So you have to follow all the rules, and you have to get a mortgage loan originator as well if you do more than 3 loans in a 1-year period. So hopefully that's clear and gives you some idea. There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of confusion, I think, on this. It's really not that hard. Bottom line is you should probably use a mortgage loan originator anyways. It will definitely, reduce your time on chasing documents and trying to prove their ability to pay and all that stuff. And it's much safer. If you do it that way, you're never going to have any issues. And you can pay that person, $400 or $500 and, have it kind of done for you. But again, if you didn't want to, the first 3 loans, you don't have to do it, but you have to follow the rules that I mentioned before. So hopefully that helped you. And if you have any questions, of course, as always, shoot me an email at randy@incomestacker.com. Make sure you sign up at incomestacker.com to get more lessons such as this. And finally, subscribe to our YouTube channel shown here. Well, hopefully you enjoyed, and we'll see you on the next video.